Wealth to me means an abundance in all your areas of life. It took me a while to really separate the meaning of what wealth is and what riches are. And we often get confused by the two. And we often end up chasing money and we end up living a life that's unfulfilled. It took me a while to get to this realization. So let me take you back to where it all started, right? Back when I was growing up, it was 9 of us in a two-bedroom apartment here in Stanford and Merle Avenue before the apartment complexes got torn down. And, I never even had my own room. I didn't even have a bed. I used to sleep on the couch for pretty much my entire childhood. And up until I think it was about 5th grade before I moved. And I always remember we had one of the flip up beds that you would just kind of unfold and prop up. And my uncle used to set up, and then I used to be in the couch. Our grandparents used to have their room, and then I had an uncle and an aunt and my older cousin all in another room. There was a bunch of us. I don't know how we all fit, but money was always tight growing up. I never had the opportunity to buy the new shoes. My father was never around. Me and my mother never had the best relationship. And my grandparents come from a very traditional upbringing because they were born and raised in the Dominican Republic. And so there, it's pretty much work, work, work until you die, right? That's pretty much it. And work until you can no longer move, right? And so I always was brought up with these, scarce beliefs, these poverty mindset that kind of just trapped me. And it's really ingrained deeply into my subconscious. And my whole life, I really didn't know why. I never was an entrepreneur. I never thought about money. I had friends that, would go to sneaker conventions back in middle school. They would go in, one pair of kicks or two pair of kicks, come out with like 6, 7, 8 boxes. I don't know how they did it. Right? Somehow they always left with more shoes than they came in with. And I never, although being next to them this entire time, I never once picked up any of those traits, right? And so growing up in high school, it was a personal finance class, and it planted a seed in me, a seed that I didn't realize was planted until much further on after, right? And that seed was that if you start learning about money, you start becoming financially literate, your life could change. And I didn't realize that until the pandemic happened when I read this book people refer to as the Purple Bible, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And so it was when I read that book that I realized there's another way of viewing things. I realized that I resonated so much with the poor dad and all the upbringings and all the ideas and beliefs that the poor dad had. That's what, I was experiencing in my life. Never really realized that. I couldn't put it to words, right? And reading that book really opened a door to me to think differently. Opened a door that allowed me to think in a way that wasn't really allowed with my upbringing. And so that book kind of made me have this epiphany where I really started thinking differently about what wealth is, what is money, how can you become financially literate? And I started going on YouTube. I watched every video double speed. I was flying through videos left and right. Like if you've seen my YouTube history, it was flooded with like, how to build your credit, which index funds to use. Now just searching everything up and down, podcasts, books, reading, learning, listening to try and kind of make sense of all these informations. As you know, we live in a world where anyone can pretend to be a financial guru. Anyone can give you advice. Anyone that speaks with some confidence and some authority can make it seem like they're really giving you some great advice. And I had to kind of decipher all of that on my own because I didn't have someone to go to ask for that guidance, someone to go to that came from an abundance mindset, that came from a lot. And one of the biggest, differences I realized early on in my life is when I took a trip to the Hamptons and back in middle school. And they got some money over there. So, I'll keep it short, but they have a lot of money over there. And I never realized, I just was there as a kid. As a kid, you're a lot more innocent. And just like, oh, I was at my friend's summer house. And I didn't realize, like, why do people have summer houses? How did they get there? I was never curious about those things. And then once I got in my journey, I started to realize that if I started seeking out these other people, then maybe I could acquire some of that wealth in my own life to then start giving back to the people in my life. And so it took me a while to kind of make, use of all that information, but it led me to create my podcast where now I get to hear all different walks of life. And as you get more perspective and look into more people, you'll see that wealth is really subjective. And until you gain clarity in your life as to what you want to do, you'll never be able to live a truly wealthy life because you'll always be chasing a definition of wealth that you don't have even defined for yourself. And the journey to wealth, it's extremely difficult. It's long. There's hurdles everywhere. And one quote that helped me push through despite it all, and I'm gonna leave you guys with this, is when if life was easy, it wouldn't be worth living. God gives his best soldiers the worst missions. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.